Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning? Good. You know, I am so excited to be here, and I really want to thank you for letting me speak today. I always feel that sermons is a way to really share your heart and really digest the Word of God, and I want to thank you for giving me that chance this morning. So when this opportunity presented itself, I leapt for it. So here I am today. So thank you very much for letting me be here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Miilhan, or the actual Korean word is Miilhan. So it literally means America, Miguk, Japan, Ilbon, and Korea, Hanguk. So, I like to think that's kind of unusual, but I guess in our family, our church family, it's not so unusual. But after having explained it 1,000 times, it's definitely had an effect on me, and I really feel that it's a part of my destiny to bring these nations together. So I'm also the vice president of the church with two others, Mari Curry from Florida and Alexa Ward. And most importantly, I am a husband and a father. And so my wife and baby are not here today. They're actually in Japan. And we're going to join together at the Top Gun workshop at Cheongpyeong. But I'd like to show you a picture of them, which is already up there, I see. My wife's name is Sayaka. So it's the same vowel, Sayaka. She's wonderful, best friend of mine. Oh, go back to the previous one. And my baby, her name is Ayumi. So you, me, that's her name. Okay. But it's really a beautiful name. Many of you are Japanese, is short for I, you is like a connecting character, and me is beauty. So it's like the unity of love and beauty, or harmony and joy and divine principle. Something you should know about me is that I love the divine principle. Yeah. Let's give it up for divine principle, yeah. So much so that I would name my daughter after, something in chapter 1. So I was really happy to hear that my pastor Manoa, she says he's doing a series on the divine principle. Is that right? And so this week, he said if he's given me a choice to talk about human portion of responsibility. So it's our 5% and God's 95%. Which was very convenient for me because I've been talking about this point many times in my previous sermons. So thank you, Pastor Manoj, who's actually relocating my car because it was parked in the corner. Thank you. So we had our first reading. I want to read another one. This is from the same section of the book that I think we're all reading, right? Dr. Balcom asked for us to read chapter 2 and chapter 5 at least before Father Songhua to understand true parents. So this is chapter 2, section 1, our growth and portion of responsibility. From the perspective of the principle of creation, you must take responsibility for your own actions. Even though God carries a 95% portion of responsibility, we must take responsibility for the remaining 5%. These two combined make 100%. This is the principle of creation. The reason for this principle is that God wants us to participate in His creation so that we can be given the privilege of authority of co-creators. God's responsibility is 95%, while only 5% was allocated to human beings. Nonetheless, the first human beings could not meet even that standard. Thus, no sooner had history begun than it was plunged into darkness, so that human beings had not even the slightest taste of the true world. Even today, we live without ever having experienced a true world. So because we never fulfilled our responsibility, we have no idea what an ideal world looks like. When I gave a talk at Camp Sunrise recently for middle school kids, and I had an exercise about, they turned to their neighbor and asked about what does your ideal world look like? And it was actually a very difficult exercise. It was kind of hard to wonder, well, what things would we have, what things wouldn't we have. But the fact is, since no one's really completed their responsibility, we have no clue how beautiful, how amazing our world could be. I want to read one more. This one's from Book 1, God, Chapter 1, God's existence and attributes. 17. The Creator, standing at the center of the universe, protects it with a strong sense of responsibility. He protects and nurtures the universe well. Not only that, he takes responsibility for all things, good and bad. He never runs away from that responsibility. As the great Lord of the universe, God takes responsibility, protects, and nurtures it. Thus, all beings desire to create unity with God at the center. So God always does his 95% responsibility, right? In fact, he kind of takes the whole 100% under his own wing, although he can only do 95% because we have to actually be the ones to do it, right? So I know a lot of times we talk about our 5%. Make sure you do your 5%. Something we don't really emphasize is that God always does his 95%. Meaning, sometimes there are moments in our life where we go out on a limb for God, maybe in a faith that we don't understand 100%, right? And I feel it's because we don't trust. We don't really trust God, actually. And because we don't trust that God's going to do his 95%, we feel kind of unwilling to put forward our 5%, which is, of course, 100% of our effort. So that's kind of a realization that I came to. There was one time when, here's an example of many, where I didn't really trust God at first, but he came through. When I went to University of Maryland, I was running this Global Peace Festival. At that time, that was like the big thing, campus one. And I was talking to like a different, like a religious board on campus, and I wanted to get their support. And so I met with them, and things seemed to be pretty good. So I put one of the organization's name on my flyer that went around. We printed a whole bunch of them. They went on buses, and we posted them everywhere. And then later, I get an angry email saying, "Why is our name on the flyer?" Right? So I was like freaking out, and I don't have time to do this. I have classes to prepare for and all this kind of stuff. So that night, I was just praying desperately to God, like, I don't know what to do. I'll do whatever I have to, but I felt what God told me was, Miilhan, you did what you're supposed to do, and everything's going to be fine. So I'm like, okay. The next day, another person who's been helping me out on campus, she ends up calling up that guy and not only getting him to apologize to me, but to pay for all the flyers that I had just put out there. So that night when I prayed, I was like, God, I want to trust you. I'm sorry for not trusting you, actually. It's because God will always do his 95% if we do ours, right? So that's all nice in theory. So the question for me has always been, well, what is my responsibility, right? I think once you know what your responsibility is, it's kind of easy because you can just go for it with all your heart. So to talk about this, I want to share my experience with meeting with True Mother. So I was appointed with Mari and Katerina Connery in January 1st, technically, but we didn't really start until a few months later. But right after we were appointed, we were called to go back to Las Vegas and to join in a witnessing effort there. I know Damien was there and a few other people. And we didn't really know what we were going to do. We were just there for a weekend. But we joined the witnessing team. We went out and we just shared the love with people, brought them to our evening program. It was nice. And the next day we had our Sunday service. And after the service, we were told that True Mother wanted to meet with us. And I wasn't even properly dressed. I didn't know we were going to meet with her. Kind of silly of me, right? I was like wearing a flannel shirt, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm just doing my responsibility, right? So we're in the waiting room, waiting for True Mother. Finally, she comes, and then the 6 of us go in. And among us, it's the 3 vice presidents, Mari, me, and Katerina. And then there was Dr. Kyung Kim, Dr. Balcom, and Dr. Jenkins. So we're all kind of humbly going in there. We get on our knees, right, and we're kind of waiting what's going to happen next with True Mother. So she's there. Interestingly, the first thing she asks is, did you witness? And it's a good thing we did. I mean, that is why we came, after all. So we said, yes, Mother, we did. And then she asked us, did you bring any guests? And yeah, it's a good thing we did, right? So we said, yes, Mother, we did. I don't even want to think about, if we hadn't, I don't even want to know how that would have ended. But she seemed pretty pleased with that. And then she went on and talked about America. And she talked about how America was back in during the Great Depression, and how America was down internally and externally, and obviously it was a very hard time. And despite all of this, all that happened, we created the Hoover Dam. That the Hoover Dam was it was more than just a beautiful, phenomenal structure, but it represented hope. It represented a miracle in a bad economy, that we can create something like that. And many believe that actually that kind of helped us move out of the Great Depression. And then she told us, as new leaders, you have that potential to make miracles happen. I'm thinking, wow, it's really inspiring. I'm thinking, wait a second, she's asking us to make miracles. And I'm sure she's going to follow up with that one. And then she goes on and talks about building your following. It's kind of interesting. Ultimately she's talking about witnessing, but she's saying if you don't have anyone that kind of find true parents through you, there's nothing. There's no substance for when you die. I guess there's nothing really you can hold on to that has any value. Or she said nothing to your name or something. And I think what she was talking about is another way of putting tribal messiahship. So who are here for the first time and not really familiar with tribal messiahship? So I have an idea of, okay, so we're kind of familiar with what that is. And so she's telling us to work on to witness. And so I never forgot about that. Never really forgot about what True Mother told us. And for me, the biggest miracle that I could make is to become a spiritual father, have a spiritual son or daughter. So I've been working on this miracle recently. And maybe a month and a half ago, we went out witnessing with some other HQ staff. And we went out the plan was to go out to Bryant Park and meet people. And this was during the witnessing revivals. And so this was a Friday afternoon, and before we went out, I really prayed. And I remember reading fathers once said that before you go witnessing, you really need to pray for the people you're going to meet. And you may even become so deep in prayer that you may even find the name of the person you're going to meet. And so I prayed, and I was really sincere, and then a name came to me. Right. Brian. The guy's name is Brian that I'm going to meet. And it's funny, later I realized that we're going to Bryant Park, so I don't know if that had any influence on that. But so anyway, we're walking up to Bryant Park. I'm with Damien and Carlson and Koichi. And we're just having a good time. It's just 4 guys on the streets. It's great. So we're walking up, and then I tell the others that God told me this morning that I'm going to meet Brian. And so it was yeah, cool. So we go out there, we get to Bryant Park, we split up, and we talk to people. So I'm challenging myself because Brian's going to be a white guy, right? So I'm talking to more white people, which is a little more difficult. I mean, come on, they usually less open to things, generally speaking. It's true, right? I meet a white couple. They're actually French. Like, oh, of course, right? And I meet some other people. Had some really good conversations, but I didn't meet Brian. Then I met this one white guy. Sat down, and he was in the area just for. I think he's from Boston. Had like a job interview or something, and his name wasn't Brian. But we had a really good conversation. As we're walking back, and Damien asks me, "Oh, did you meet Brian?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't meet Brian, but I met a lot of great people, and it was really, really nice." And then Damien just shouts out, "Brian!" in the streets, like as we're walking back to the New Yorker. And so if there's two guys standing here right outside their office, and the four of us are walking this way, and right when Damien yells that, this guy is like, "Yeah?" And I'm thinking, this guy's joking, right? He's not serious. Because he wasn't like, "Huh?" or "What?" He was just like, "Yeah," like, "Hello." And so I'm in shock. My heart's beating like crazy. I'm scared. I don't know what's going to happen next. So I just say, "Hi, God told me I was meeting you today." And we're all just smiling and like thinking light of the situation. I'm like, "Damien, help me. I don't know what to say." This is your expertise, right? And then Damien's just like, "Yeah, hi, how are you, and all this." And we do some small talk. I get his phone number. And next week, we have lunch together. Just me and Brian, And, it turns out this guy is, he's the same age as me. And he's married. He's got like a 4-year-old son. And I was really nervous, actually. I was scared the whole time, but he was very natural, and we actually have a lot in common. I checked out his Facebook, and we both like basketball, and we're both kind of into technology. I'm thinking like, this is amazing, and this is nothing short of a miracle. It's funny. I told this story to Dr. Kim, and he was really excited about it, and he told it to your mother. So, but it's. And ever since I had a baby, or not me, my wife did, before we had a baby, actually before then, let me rewind a little bit. I still remember the moment where I really wanted to have a child. It was like after church service, and there were some people cleaning up there. There was one lady, she was working with her husband to clean up the building. And she was there with like her little, probably like 4 or 5-year-old son. And I saw how they interacted, and just somehow I just felt, I want that. I want a baby. I want a kid to share that kind of love with. And so recently I felt the same way for having a spiritual child, It's like, I want that. I want a spiritual child, someone who can grow in every step that they take in finding true parents in this truth, after that truth, learning this in the divine principle, finding, oh my God, that's the God that I've been looking for my whole life. And to be there with that person all the way, I want that. I need that in my life. How about you? Is that something you want? Yeah? I feel like that's really where it starts, where it started for me anyway. Something that Reverend Rendell told me, he has spiritual children, so I like to talk to people who actually have done this before, And he told me that whenever you witness, you're looking for your second self. And that made a lot of sense to me because your children are almost just like you, right? So naturally, your spiritual children should probably, be nice if they were like you too. So you kind of see yourself growing again in the faith. And so when I heard, and that was after I met Brian, so I was like, wow, this is really meant to be. But of course, there's kind of the nervousness, right? The kind of the uncertainty of what's going to happen. Well, maybe, he's just going to forget about everything and just cut off our relationship. All these fears that I have. But you know what? I understand that God never forgets, one, and also your investment is never lost. Whenever you invest in people, really love people, that love is never lost. And even if that person leaves, the next person will inherit all of that. And that was really encouraging for me because it was easy to feel like it was all going to be for nothing. But I don't feel that now. And I even want the pain of when they go through difficulties or when they struggle in understanding the faith and go this and that way. I even want to experience that real love where I actually care about this person enough that even when they hurt me, that it really hurts. Like really having a child. I want all of it. Now I want to read another passage. This is, of course, from the Cheonsungyeon. And there's actually one that Damien brought up to me, and every time I read it like 3 or 4 times, and it's I'll never forget it because it's so true. So this is from Book 8, Life of Faith and Training, Chapter 2, page. The page is 864. Good, somebody have their books, it's good. When your heart moves, this is section 14. When your heart moves you to witness and tells you, let's go witness. There are those who witness because they want to, those who go with the flow, and those who witness because they are scared or afraid for their lives. How should it be for us? Should we witness because we welcome it, because we go with the flow, because we know we'll die if we evade it, or because we are afraid? Well, which one is it? All of these motives fail the test. How then should we witness? The mind and body stand in the position of subject and object partners, and you start out with joy when the environmental conditions conform to your partner's intent. Your mind was meant to begin with happiness, not sadness. The experience of joy, rather than sadness, was to come first. What was the fall? The elements of sadness took primacy before happiness could blossom. We are people in search of the path of destiny leading to redemption. Therefore, we need to begin with joy and internalize God's will in a joyful process. So what Father's saying is that witnessing is to experience joy. This flies, it really likes me, huh? Maybe I should move around more. So witnessing is to experience joy. I'm about to kill this thing. It's funny, when I was in Cheongpyeong, I was sweeping around there, and there was this mosquito that kept buzzing around my ear. And I was so annoyed about it for like half an hour, but then at some point I just broke, and I love that mosquito. It's so weird. It's like this creation, right? It's interesting how you can experience God that way. Anyway, so it's for joy, and it's not that complicated. It's really for that reason. I mean, it makes sense. A spiritual child. Why do you have children in the first place? For joy, right? You invest in them, and then you get something in return. So that's what witnessing is for. And it's not just for unificationists too. I love when Dr. Kim, our continental director, he was saying how we should witness not only to people outside of our movement, but even people who are a little bit on the fringe, a little bit uncertain of what's going on in the movement, haven't been so involved. Like, it's just as valuable to reach out to our brothers and sisters who are looking for joy. I mean, who isn't, right? So I want to close in saying that is our responsibility. To experience joy, isn't that nice? To witness, to testify to the love that you've received from God, and feel like it's a natural thing to share that with people. And don't worry about if things don't go out the way you planned, because that's really not the purpose. Actually, the purpose is for you to experience joy. I mean, you can even think it from an entirely selfish perspective. I want to experience joy. And if I get a spiritual child out of that, great. Yesterday, I looked at my tribe list, and I Facebooked a few of them. And I'm just feeling joy. So much joy. So continue to dream big, because God's going to take care of the 95%. Just do your 5. Witness. Share true parents' love. Share any happiness, inspiration with others. Enjoy. Thank you.